Hello, Year 6. Nice picture. So, today in maths we are looking at fractions. Now fractions, every time someone hears this, probably your parents, they go, oh, I can't do fractions, oh, I really hate fractions, fractions are really, really hard. And this is where we need to say, actually they're not that difficult at all. I honestly believe that today's lesson is more straightforward than yesterday's. So I'm gonna talk you through multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, and fractions. It's nothing that we haven't done before. I think we'll be pretty good at it. But yeah, follow the video. I'll go quite fast just so that it's not like a 45-minute video, and pause it as and when you need to. Okay, I'll try a transition, but often they're rubbish, aren't they? Anyway, let's give it a go. Okay, so addition and subtraction of fractions. Now, if we've got something, here's our success criteria, you can pause on this screen. But anyway, we need to change any mixed numbers to improper fractions. We'll get to that in a minute. We need to use multiples to make all the denominators the same. We'll get to that in a minute. And then we need to add or subtract it. So sometimes you might get a question that's literally something like 3/10, add 4/10. And it's 7/10. Don't make the mistake of saying 7/20. If you were doing 3 bananas and 4 bananas, it would be 7 bananas. It wouldn't become 7 apples. It wouldn't change to something different. So that's just going to be 7/10. If our denominators are the same, we can add or take away straight away, but it stays the same. Then sometimes you might get something that looks more like this. You might get something like 3/4, add a half, add, let's say, a quarter. Now, we can't add quarters and halves together straight away. So what we need to do is make the denominators the same. So to do that, I'm going to find a number that 4, 2, and 4 have as common multiples, things that they have in their times tables. And I would do that by looking at the 4 and thinking, well, can I easily make a 2 or 4? And in this case, I can. So 3/4 is going to stay as 3/4, and 1/4 is going to stay as 1/4. But then we go, well, how have I got from that 2 to that 4, and I've multiplied it by 2. So to keep the fraction the same, equivalent, I've got to multiply the numerator by 2. Whatever I do to the denominator, I need to do to the numerator. So I'm going to multiply by 2 over 2, which equals 2/4. Now I've got quarters, 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 so I can add them all up. So I have 3/4, add 4/4 is 5/4, add another one is 6/4. So you're always finding common multiples. Then you might end up with something like 3 2/3 take away 1 and let's say 6/12. Now, as it says in our success criteria, if we have mixed numbers like this, we need to make them improper first. So how many thirds are in 3 wholes? Well, it's 3 times 3, which is 9, plus those 2. So we end up with 11 thirds, still a takeaway. How many twelfths are in a whole? Well, it's 12, plus those 6, so that's going to be 18 twelfths. And now my denominators are still different, so now we need to make them the same. Can I make a thirds into 12s easy enough? Twelfths. Yeah, I times it by 4. So my 18 twelfths is staying the same. But that's going to be something over 12. Well, to get from that 3 to that 12, I've multiplied it by 4. And if I've multiplied the denominator by 4, I need to multiply the numerator by 4. So 11 times 4 is 44 twelfths. So then I've got 44 twelfths take away 18 twelfths. Well, 44 take away 20 twelfths would be 24. Add 2 back on. 26 twelfths. And then very quickly, if you were going for the challenge, can we simplify that? Well, yeah, we can. So we can divide it both by 2. So we end up with 13 over 6, which we can also say is 1 whole. Oh no, 2 wholes, sorry. Because 13 divided by 6 is 2, and a 6 left over. And that's addition and subtraction, all pretty much of a muchness. Hopefully that makes sense. Now often we think of multiplication being a little bit trickier, but when it comes to fractions it's not. So if I have something like 3/5 times 2/4, we don't have to worry about making the denominators the same, because all we need to do is multiply the numerator by the numerator, so 3 times 2, which is 6, and the denominator by the denominator, which is 20. There's my answer. Straightforward. Now it gets a little bit more complicated if we have mixed numbers. So if we have something like 2 2/5 times by 1 3/4, what we need to do in this point is change the mixed numbers to improper fractions. So how many fifths are in 2 wholes? Well, 5 times 2 is 10 fifths plus those 2 fifths. So that's going to be 12 fifths. And I'm timesing that by how many quarters are in 1 whole? Well, it's 4, 1 times 4, plus those 3 left over, so that's 7 quarters. And then I'm back to like this kind of question. So 12 times 7 is going to be 84. 5 times 4, denominator by denominator, is 20. And my answer is 84 20ths. And that's multiplication. And like we said, you could simplify that. So we could, let's say, divide it all by 2 and get 42 over 10. And actually we could divide that by 2 again, by 2 over 2. So we end up with 21 over 5. And we could simplify that because 5, 10, 15, 20, there's 4 wholes and 1 fifth. And then some of us might be able to change that to 4.2. Now don't worry about this bit. This is your answer. This is just a bit of a challenge for those people who might feel up for it. And that's multiplication. Right, next, let's have a look at division. And lastly, that leaves us with division. So, division. Same again, we need to be working with improper fractions, not mixed numbers. And let's say we have something like 3 fifths divided by 2 quarters. Now, I know in school I've gone through the reason that this works, and I'm not going to get into that today. What we need to remember for now is we keep the first fraction the same. Dodgy KFC, KCF, we keep, okay, the first fraction the same. We are going to change the division to a multiplication. Like I've said, I know in school we've talked about why this works. For now, let's not worry too much about that. And then we are going to flip the F, the second fraction, the other way. So our 4 becomes our numerator and our 2 becomes the denominator. And now we're back to like the multiplication stuff. So we are just doing 3 times 4, numerator times numerator is 12. And then 5 times 2, denominator times denominator, which is 10. Now it gets a little bit more complicated if we have mixed numbers. So if we have something like 2 and 2 fifths divided by 1 and a third, let's say. Now, we don't want to be using mixed numbers again, so we're going to change mixed numbers to improper fractions. So how many fifths are there in 2 wholes? Well, 5 times 2, it's 10, plus those 2 fifths, so my answer is 12 fifths, and I'm going to be dividing that by this number, but as a mixed number. So how many thirds are in a whole? It's 3, plus that one, so 4 thirds. I'm not bothering with my keep, change, flip yet until I get it like that. Now I've got it like this with no mixed numbers, I can keep, change, flip, so keep the first fraction the same, change the division to a multiplication, and flip the last fraction. So I have 12 times 3, numerator times numerator, which is 36, and 5 times 4, denominator times denominator, which is 20. And then, like we said, some of us might go and challenge ourselves, so we maybe divide both of those by 2 and get 18 over 10. And then we can divide those by 2 again and get 9 over 5. And we can realise that that's 1 4 fifths. And then some of us might realise that that's 1.8. Don't worry about this bit. That's the answer. This bit's if you want to challenge yourself. And that is everything you'll need today. So we've got, found our bits, addition and subtraction, which is the most complicated one because we need to make all the denominators the same. That I think is the trickiest one. Then we've got multiplication, which is just about making sure we don't have mixed numbers, and then it's numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. And then we've got division, which again is all about making sure we don't have improper fractions, and we keep the first fraction the same, change the division to a multiplication, and then flip this one round so that we have our answer. And that is our 4 operations of fractions in a video. Okay. And that, in a nutshell, is fractions. So if you need to go back and pause any bits or watch any bits again, that's absolutely fine. But have a go. So choose ready, steady, or go, or maybe do a couple of them, and have a go. Your challenge is, if you fly through it quite quickly, can you simplify the fractions? So say you get something like 12 over 10, can you simplify that to 6 fifths? Or maybe you can simplify it to 1 and 1 fifth, or maybe you can simplify it to 1.2. Anyway, that's a challenge for you. But yeah, choose ready, steady, or go, Make sure you send a photo of your work to me and enjoy the day. See you later.